Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Christenberry Fieldhouse. It's the second and final day of the Jaguar Rumble volleyball tournament to open the 2018 volleyball season. We'll have the Mount Olive Trojans taking on Lander University here in this one. This is game one of our doubleheader today. The second game will begin at 2:30 Eastern Time. It'll feature the host, Augusta Jaguars, taking on the Falcons of Montevello. I'm Robert Ambrose with Blake Collins. Blake, we had a quadruple header yesterday. Every team in it played twice yesterday, including the Jaguars and Montevello, who play later today. They both swept both of their sets.
Right.
And they'll be at it today for the, I guess that's the unofficial championship game of this tournament.
The main event is absolutely going to be a game you do not want to miss. But this matchup in particular is going to be interesting because Lander shoots into today's matchup with a 1-1 record. They were in a couple of tournaments before this, and as we saw last night with Mount Olive, they can mount fierce comebacks when they're behind, and it's a pretty good team overall. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do when they have a chance to have the lead. Now, they did against Montevallo yesterday, but Montevallo was cooking on all cylinders yesterday, and so it'll be interesting to see how Mount Olive, once they get a lead, can do. And Lander, I was noticing that they were working on their footwork quite well, and that could definitely come into play in this matchup.
Absolutely. As Montevello or Mount Olive had a tough day yesterday, because you mentioned how the Falcons of Montevello were clicking on all cylinders. So were the Jaguars, and both those teams for one of their two games yesterday faced Mount Olive, and Mount Olive got swept in both of them. And they'll look to end this tournament strong here today. This is Lander's first and only game of this tournament. They were also played in the Aiken tournament across the border this weekend. They're 1-1 so far this season. They're basically switching places with Albany State, who played twice yesterday, but is not here for the final day.
Lander has increasingly gotten better as the game goes on. Right there, a dig out by the libero. It's a nice setup for a transition setup into a kill from the Lander outside hitter that was placed perfectly on the backcourt to secure Lander's second point.
Lander goes on the attack, and Mount Olive gets it back over. And Lander gets the point. It's important for both teams in their home whites today. And this is good for AU, even though they don't play Lander this weekend, but they're getting a free look at Lander, who is a member of the Peach Belt Conference.
Absolutely. Scouting your conference, and that's going to come well in handy when these two face off against each other in conference play. And when you already have a chance to scout live, not only that, but look at video and other components as well. You formulate a game plan to counterattack what Lander in this case will bring to the table. So it's an absolute thrill for Augusta to be able to do that here. But the question I would have coming out of that, with Augusta being so strong yesterday, and it's looking like Lander's footwork is on point and their transitions are fluid through their passing and their digs early on in this ball game, Lander will only get better from here. So when those two face each other, it's going to be a heck of a ball game and a heck of a matchup. And so can the fluidity of Lander, even as it improves, kind of help them keep pace with the Jaguars? Because we saw them yesterday the Jaguars were cooking on all cylinders, and they were lights out.
Absolutely. And the Jaguars matchup with Lander will be right here at Christenberry Fieldhouse on October 5th. That's a Friday night game. We'll look forward to that one. But a lot of great games ahead of us before then as well.
And we talked about the resiliency of Mount Olive and touched on it yesterday. This matchup is neck and neck with a Peach Belt Conference team in Lander. So the competition is elevated here for Mount Olive as well, as like last night. And they're hanging tough. We talked about how their day went yesterday and what a night of rest might be able to do to have a resurgency in the Mount Olive game plan and offense to combat Lander. And it seems to have proven true that night of rest and just the prospects of formulating a different game plan is helping them tremendously in this contest.
Absolutely is. So far, both teams battling back and forth as the game has literally been back and forth. We're even at 6. And it's now 7-6 in favor of Mount Olive. And make it now 8-6. For those who are considering checking out some of the action here at Christenberry Fieldhouse, parking is free. This is a beautiful facility that AU plays their home volleyball, men's and women's basketball games in. So come check it out if you're not busy today. (9-6) in favor of Mount Olive. Yesterday we had a quadruple header, Blake, and it was a lot of fun, all 4 games. They were all sweeps, but what are the odds on that? But anyway, before we get to that, just what a great day of volleyball regardless.
Absolutely, and especially if you love the pure aspects of the sport, you get to see great footwork by Montevallo, Augusta. Mount Olive showed some excellent footwork and eye movement, strategic strategies going on into it, and for the teams that came down and yes, they got swept, but that's also a very good learning experience and building blocks to catapult them in their seasons upcoming to be able to formulate chemistry and to be able to go up against tough opponents like that and come out on top, especially in their conference plays coming up.
Yes, absolutely. And for the Jaguars, conference play begins on the 21st of September, Friday night against Flagler. That'll also be here at Christenberry Fieldhouse.
And Robert, as we're talking about that, Lander keeps on with solid transitions, solid setups, and solid volleys to set up these kills and attacks by Lander to penetrate the Mount Olive defense, but then Mount Olive shoots right back up with a little bit of a different strategy there.
Absolutely. Mount Olive is answering back, looking to finish strong in this tournament. They're up 11-9. They were swept twice yesterday.
And that's something, too, that Montevallo and Augusta utilize very well against Mount Olive, and it seems like they have learned from those 2 encounters is that Augusta and Montevallo mixed up their plans of attacks very well. they would come hard one particular possession and drill a kill. The next possession, you would see them kind of use soft touches and kind of set up with digs and transitions to kind of confuse the defense. And Mount Olive seems to, at least on the last couple of points, that they have tried to implement that, and it's starting to work wonders for them.
They're now leading 12-11. They just got a point after letting a ball that sailed over the net, hit by Lander, went out of bounds. They were able to recognize it and take advantage of it. That's one of the things that the Jaguars did extremely well yesterday against them. And that's one of the factors why not only that the Jaguars swept Mount Olive in the nightcapper yesterday, but the Jaguars won set 2, 25-3.
The Jags also have a front court that is aggressive. Even on defense, they will get up, formulate a brick wall on the attacks, and not give you any room to squeeze an attack through. And even on offense, they're up, they're ready to fire away and expose some of the holes in the defense. And yeah, Mount Olive ran into a little bit of a different animal with Augusta and Montevallo, but learning from that, you're seeing kind of a growth out of them from yesterday, and they're hanging with a Peach Belt Conference rival in Lander for Augusta, and they're hanging tough, only down by 1 right now.
Mount Olive in their own conference will be a force to be reckoned with for sure this season. We're tied at 13. It's still back and forth.
And these are the types of matchups that may stress out coaches, but from a fan's perspective, you love to see these back and forth battles. It's what makes volleyball so intriguing, because the momentum can change at any moment. Different attack strategies, different game plans could score you points in different types of ways to attack a defense. It all formulates into an interesting game that, in this particular type of environment, with it being back and forth like it is, from a fan's perspective, at least for me, this is a dream matchup when it comes to back and forth, being able to see what both teams are bringing to the table. And it's different than the other, but it's just absolutely so well. These two teams are so evenly matched. It's great to see.
And that usually calls for the back and forth match that we're seeing when it's evenly matched.
Absolutely.
It's 15-13 in favor of Lander, although they may have the lead, but I would not say they have any momentum.
Not at all. And we talked about Andrew Riviera, the libero, yesterday, keeping Mount Olive in a lot of the points that they were into against very rigorous opponents in Montevallo and Augusta. She's had kind of a silent day thus far, but she's also had an integral part in helping set up and transition into some of the attacks that you've been seeing from Mount Olive today. So keep an eye out for her as well, to kind of maybe take matters into her own hands later on in this game and become a force for Mount Olive.
Lander has now scored 4 in a row, so good time for her to step up would be now.
Absolutely.
They have the serve. That's going to put the Trojans on the attack, and the whistle on the call is a violation on the Trojans, so that gives Lander a point, and it's 18-13.
And anytime you have good footwork like Lander does, it's going to be more difficult to combat, because their rotations are quicker, their rotations are more flawless, and the different aspects, like an outside hitter can cover for a middle hitter in a rotation very solidly, and the transition for that is hard to kind of combat from the opposing team's perspective, because the holes that you would normally look for in a defense are covered up very quickly, and it doesn't leave you much room to go unless you make adjustments on the fly from the opposing offense's perspective to thwart that rotation aspect and the footwork that Lander has.
And a game like this is will be a game of adjustments for sure when it's back and forth. And we have a timeout taken by the Mount Olive Trojans, as they've now given up 7 points in a row and trail 20-13 to Lander, who seems to have turned it on. And we'll see how Mount Olive is able to respond here. Speaking of those adjustments, it's all about answering back.
Absolutely. And then capitalizing on the mistakes that you see and that you're given, because taking points away like that is a critical aspect that you might not see in a set, and you might not be able to get many of them during a set, but it's the difference between a very tight set and gaining a victory within a set and going into the next set feeling comfortable with your game, and then being able to plan your attack accordingly and venture into, like we saw yesterday with a lot of the sweeps that we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. Trojans are ready to go after their timeout. Lander's still talking things over.
And for Lander right here, just continue your game. You've got a solid foundation of footwork. Rotations are very fluid. Transitions are awesome. And for Mount Olive, keep trying to implement the pressure that we saw yesterday in that Montevallo game that saw them come back and saw them keep the game close, or keep the contest close and the matchup close for a good while in that third and first sets of that game. So it'll be interesting to see how the first set plays out. But for Montevallo, it's not to get out of your game with you being down by this much.
And just now we saw Lander with an outstanding kill, and now they get an outstanding serve that was pretty hard to dig up for Mount Olive. So it's 22-13, 9 unanswered points for Lander University.
And even though you stand even on your 2 feet, you kind of want to, in situations like that, you kind of want to be kind of on the balls of your feet, ready to pounce and ready to dig out softer serves like that, and to keep your team into the ball game. And in that particular scenario, they were caught a little bit back on their heels, and they weren't able to adjust to get the dig out.
The Trojans were able to catch them off guard and stop the bleeding. 22-14 is the score. The Trojans are back to serve. And that puts Lander on the attack, and Mount Olive digs it up beautifully back over on the Trojan side, or on Lander's side.
Now notice here too, another point. The point was put emphasis on right there, but if that point would have kept going, there was something there that I noticed, and I don't know if Mount Olive had a chance to respond to it. But it's good to keep an eye for future points, is that Lander likes to put 5 people up on the front court and only leave one defensive setter back. And that's something that Mount Olive can capitalize on if they realize that in the coming sets.
And we're getting closer to starting set 2 with it being set point, and set 1 officially goes to Lander, 25-14. It was tied at 13, going extremely back and forth, and then Lander pulled away to take set 1. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we will preview set 2 on the Augusta University Athletics Network on YouTube. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Chris. It's set 2 of day 2 of the first game of day 2 here at the Jaguar Rumble tournament. Lander won set 1 and looking to keep things rolling after finishing set 1 strong. It was tied at 13 and they outscored Mount Olive 11-1 to finish things out. And we'll see how Mount Olive can respond as well. And it will be Lander's turn to serve here to start the second set. And Mount Olive had several players up on the net, and neither of them seemed to approach the ball, and it lands between them. A little confusion there, so that's a point for the Bearcats.
The indecisiveness from the middle hitters and the outside hitter cost them very well because you had a perfect setup and a perfect transition to get a very strong kill out of it. Just that indecisiveness, just that little bit of indecisiveness there kind of messed with Mount Olive, and now they're trailing by 2.
Now they get it on the Trojan side, and they attempt the kill. It lands on top of the net, then rolls over to the Trojans side. Now the Bearcats on the attack, and they get it over, and that lands out of bounds. Point for the Trojans.
One other thing, too, especially in that first set, is that Mount Olive looks to have minimalized a lot of their mistakes from yesterday, which is definitely helping them contend with Lander here. But continue to do that, and you saw them start to pull away a little bit in that first set. Now they didn't keep the lead, but they're starting to put together more solid plays, and you're starting to see a more complete team out of them. And continuing to do that, it shows that they are capable of hanging with teams like this from a very solid Peach Belt Conference, and it's going to take them far in their season.
It absolutely will, but they're trying to work on hanging with teams for an entire set.
Right.
And a little collision on the Lander side, but they get it over, but it lands out of bounds.
That right there was a good setup, just a little bit too much power behind that soft kill, and she was trying to deaden it right in the open zone on the front court on the near side baseline here. Just could not seize that opening.
Lander now takes a 4-3 lead here. And they'll be back to serve the libero serving. Was Hannah McManus. And they have several of their players diving for it. McManus along with Riley Kunzler tried to dive for it, but they're unable to come up with it cleanly, and it goes out of bounds. So that's a point for the Trojans. So that ties it at 4.
You love the heart of the libero and the defensive setter right there. But with 2 people going after it with the same idea of diving for it, it kind of, you lose concentration with worrying about trying to collide with the other.
Oh, yeah.
And at that particular point, a deflection when you lose concentration like that may not go your way, and that's what happened with Lander.
And Lander unable to return the serve cleanly, so it's 6-4. Mount Olive scores 3 in a row. They have the lead here in set 2.
And also, too, when you're worried about that, form seems to take a little bit of a back seat as well.
And another point for Lander, so it's 6-5 on a cross-court kill. Substitution here. So Boo Luther checks in for the Bearcats. And Riley Kunzler will take a seat. And a cross-court attack. And they're going to hit it back and forth. Those are some pretty hard hit balls just now.
Absolutely, and a crucial block there by Syra Carter on the front court for Mount Olive there to keep that point alive. And you keep going back and forth. You've got a good battle between the middle hitters, the outside hitters on defense for Mount Olive, and then the nice transitional style of play that Lander infuses in their game.
That ties it at 6. Somebody lost a sock on the Lander side. Still not sure who it is. That goes over the head of the 2 Lander players guarding the net. And that's a good attack by the Trojans because the ball was not hit particularly high, but it was hit hard enough that the Lander players on the net had very minimal time to react to it, and it went right over their heads. That gives Lander the lead, 7-6. And the Trojans caught off guard on that one on a hard hit serve, so it's 8-6 Lander.
The libero there thought that it might be out of play, and then by the time she realized it, it was too late to kind of react to it and set her base to dig that ball out.
Now 9-6 Lander after the serve. And the Trojans unable to come up with that one. On the kill, they had to dive for it, and when you dive, and you're that close to the net, it's really hard to get it over, or even to a teammate for a good setup.
Especially at the position you start with when you dive for a dig like that, because you're starting lower than you would as you're standing up and trying to dig it out.
And Lander wins the battle of the net that time. And just like that, once again, they're on a bit of a run, and Mount Olive's going to take a timeout. As Lander, so far in both sets, they start out back and forth, but they've always been able, have the Bearcats, to figure out the Trojans and go on a run.
Oh, absolutely. And that incorporates every aspect we've been talking about. The footwork, the transitions that you see that are crisp to set up different shots. And not only that, but in terms of a player thinking, solid transitions like that can, for a thinking player, along with moving the eyes, can be very lucrative in securing points, because you're always thinking, okay, if I move the libero, or if I move the defensive setter over, it gives me this much of a hole to attack, and that also can come into play when you're looking at how hard you want to kill, how hard you want to float a ball over, how soft you want to, different aspects of attack like that, and especially with how Lander's setting up those particular attacks we've seen this game, it is working brilliantly for them thus far.
And Lander on the attack. And now here come the Trojans. That sails out of bounds, point for Lander. 7 straight for them. It's 13-6. And if there's anything that Lander is showing the Jaguar players and coaches who are watching this match, and something that the Jaguars will have to prepare for when they meet up on October 5th right here at the Chris, is they got to realize that even if you're able to play right with the Bearcats, once the Bearcats get on a roll, which we've seen so far in this set with the 7 straight and the way they close out set 1, it's going to be nearly impossible to stop them.
Oh, yeah. But the one thing that like to bring to the table on it too is that Augusta has extremely good footwork and a chemistry that allows them to venture out into other areas of the court and know that a outside hitter can transition into a middle attacker or middle hitter without a beat being missed. And something like that, even for as good as footwork as Lander has and as good as a transition game that they have in transitioning to attacks, to kills, to different aspects of their game, is going to be more difficult for them to implement that style of game against a quicker Augusta defense and a more solid Augusta defense, especially up front.
And the battle up front was won that time by Mount Olive, as they have the players guarding the net, and Mount Olive is able to get it over, make it 14-7. And they get it over again there, but this time the Bearcats had backup and they're able to get the kill. That makes it 15-7. And for the Jaguars, Mackenzie Beck is the person they'd want up front.
Not only that, but Natalia Govea and also Savannah Gonzalez has been huge up front for the Jags, and springing out of last year and into the first couple of games we've seen for the Jags here at Kristen Berry Fieldhouse as well. She's been able to stop the middle and stop the bleeding when the attackers are trying to make kills and trying to float things over. And at the height of their blocking ability, they've been able to formulate that brick wall that I talk about and not let anything get past them the majority of the time. And that runs through cohesion of how that team has built the chemistry and also knowing where each particular player will go in a given instance to set up different things on the defense in transition to their offense.
And the Trojans with a service error, it's 16-10. And does that land inbounds? It does not. Point for the Bearcats, 17-10.
A crucial call right there that could have gone either way, but you kind of like the idea of trying to pinpoint a ball in that tight a spot. Just the accuracy was not there behind the shot to secure the point for Mount Olive.
And in that last instance, the Bearcats hit the ball under the net. And that's a point for the Trojans. So 17-11, they serve it, and that goes straight out of bounds. And for the Bearcats, that was a very tempting serve to try and hit, but they held off it just in time, and it lands out of bounds. Perfect decision.
And it's also like the serve that we saw last set too with the Mount Olive libero Andrea Rivera on a solid serve down, had a delayed reaction that she could have dug out, but she misread on the play. Instances like that, reads are crucial to keep plays going and set up your offense. And there's been a couple of times now where Mount Olive has not been ready for whether it be serves or whether it be kills that have kept them out of the possessions that are in play.
And there's another example right there, and that makes it 21-11. And the Bearcats have been able to take advantage of that, and the Jaguars took advantage of that yesterday as well.
Absolutely.
That's why the little things matter so much. Bearcats hit it right out of bounds. It's 21-12. And a whistle and a substitution for the Trojans. And they're going to put in Dejari Cumberbatch into the game. She's a 5'10 freshman from Raleigh, North Carolina's capital city. And does that go out of bounds? No, the Bearcats save it. And they're able to get it back across. Wise decision to save that one, but nonetheless, they're unable to get it cleanly on the other end. A little confusion there, so it's 21-13. The Trojans get the point.
And that's the first example of this particular matchup that we've seen Lander become a little bit too over-aggressive in trying to save that point and dig out to a transition to be able to attack, and it bit them right there. You know, you had two deflections off the arm, and when the second one went over, the outside hitter wasn't ready for that deflection, and she missed it.
And what a beautiful deflection the Bearcats have that time, and they get it straight down in a perfect spot. It's 21-14. (22-14). Lander up.
You want to talk about isolating a specific point on the field of play, or the court in this case, here at Kristen Berry Fieldhouse. It was a prime example of isolating it, picking our spot with Lander, and then executing brilliantly and bringing the hammer down on the kill to put the emphasis on the point for Lander.
And they get another one. It's 23-14. Lander looking to take a 2-0 lead after taking set one. They're 2 points away. The Trojans dig it up and they get it across. Back on the Lander side. The Bearcats hit it over. That's up in the air. Can the Trojans hit it back over? Yes, they can. And that ball goes straight out, and that's a point for the Trojans, 23-15.
Sometimes the defense can fool the offense there, and a little quick rotation there by the Trojans kind of fooled Lander, because there was a spot where they wanted to attack, and that rotation covered that up, so they tried to execute on the opposite side and hit it just a little long on the backside of the kill.
Now 24-15. Bearcats send the libero Hannah McManus back. She'll do the serve. That lands inbounds. That's a point for Lander, and they take second set, and they lead this match 2-0. And we will take a quick break. And when we come back, we will preview set 3 on the Augusta University Athletics Network on YouTube. Stay tuned, everybody. Welcome back to the Chris. Set to start set 3. The Bearcats of Lander have taken the first 2 sets. Both of them started out back and forth, and in a game of adjustments, Blake, the Bearcats have made their adjustments in both the first 2 sets and have been able to pull away after starting out back and forth, and the Trojans haven't really had an easy time of responding to it.
No, and the thing is, too, Mount Olive has definitely made some adjustments in this game. But those adjustments have not been able to completely figure out how to tackle the Lander style of volleyball play. And you can continue to make adjustments to it and figure that out in mid-game. Lander, on the other hand, solid all the way around. Good footwork. Transitional play is outstanding. The rotations are good. They definitely can get better. Blocking is solid as well for Lander. They're kind of a more complete team in that aspect, and you know, Mount Olive is hanging in there with them though, and as you see right there, they scored the first point off of a blocking miscue up front.
And we see the Trojans taking advantage of an opportunity there, so they lead at 1-0. If you're Mount Olive, you gotta do all the little things right, and Lander's been able to take advantage of them, and that's why they've been able to go on the runs that they have.
Not only that, but to that point, do the little things right, and when there's an opening and Lander makes a mistake, push through and capitalize on that mistake. Because in a situation like this, Lander hasn't made that many mistakes, especially last set, that have cost them. They've made mistakes, but they've been able to recover from those mistakes. Mount Olive has not been able to capitalize on those mistakes and really push their mettle and push their test to see if Lander can overcome their own mistakes and try to force this into Mount Olive's game plan. And also, too, for a lot of the second and first set, Mount Olive, even though they've had some offensive flurries, they've been more responding on defense instead of attacking and being on offense. Lander's been the one who has been pushing the sets, who has been pushing the style of play, and if you're Mount Olive, you kind of want to hopefully change that here within this set and put up a drive to win a set, and then it's a different ballgame.
Well, you need to attack in order to score points.
Right.
And if you defend, you're just going to prevent the other team from scoring. And the battle of the net is won by the Trojans there, as Lander is called with a net violation. So that makes it 3-2 Mount Olive.
I guess from my vantage point, I would like to see Mount Olive push the envelope more and push the issue and kind of press the attack more on Lander than what I'm seeing.
And we do not see that in the first 2 matchups. We're seeing that a little more here at the start of the third set, as the Trojans trying to keep hope alive in this one. That goes out of bounds, so that's a Trojan point. It's 4-2. And the Trojans able to successfully administer the serve there, as that somehow caught the Bearcats off guard, so they get another point. They're up 5-2.
And it could take just a string of points like Mount Olive is doing for them to turn the tide and press the issue more. But that's kind of what they need to, what you would want to see them do to change the outlook of this matchup thus far. And to change the way the sets are going.
And that was a beautiful attack by the Trojans.
Absolutely. Put it right in between two defenders with both defenders going after it, not being able to decide which one wants it more. Both defenders diving for it. The defensive setter dove in front of the libero. Both defenders caught a touch of the ball, but just not enough to save the point.
And Lander gets a point there. We saw Lander make the adjustments in the first 2 sets. Do you see that happening again here in the third?
Minor. They've had minor adjustments. One, outside of that last point, their footwork has become better, has become a little bit more efficient up front, which has been really good. Right there, though, they did not have a solid rotation going and left the middle of the court open. But just little things like that kind of further ensure better execution on the part of Lander here.
And with Mount Olive attacking, that'll have to happen.
Absolutely.
And this time we see Lander get the attack and catches the Trojans off guard that time, so it's 7-5 now.
And it seems like now, with you mentioning that, Mount Olive has become more of an attacking more aggressively and more of an offensive style than more attacking on defense and responding to stuff with attacking, responding to Lander's attacks. Now they're becoming more aggressive. They're controlling the pace of the points more, and they are executing, and when they see mistakes, they're starting to capitalize on them.
And the Trojans capitalize there, take the 8-5 lead. And you're also seeing, speaking of aggressiveness and attacking by the Trojans, when they're attacking, they're hitting the balls a lot harder, and that's giving the Bearcats a lot less time to react, and it's showing.
And you can see the process, the thinking patterns and the process starting to take place too. Like you said, more hard attacks, and sometimes they're attacking with sharper kills, but with a little less speed. Other times they are switching it up with soft floatovers. You've seen at least one this particular set, and it's worked out brilliantly for them. So they're starting to mix things up a little bit more, and it's starting to, as you said, catch Lander off guard, but also confuse their defense more, and Mount Olive is capitalizing on that confusion.
And we just saw that again on that serve, and the ball sailed as far out of bounds as you'll ever see in a volleyball match just now. So that makes it 10-5 in favor of the Trojans, trying to win their first set of this weekend.
Case in point right there. First 2 sets, you really didn't see a transition lead a player too far. That right there was a volley set up to transition over to the near side for a lethal kill. The outside hitter just led the near side outside hitter too far, and the mistake rewards Mount Olive with their 11th point.
And that's another point for Mount Olive. A cross-court attack landing just barely in bounds. That's court awareness as good as it gets right there.
Oh, absolutely. And now you can feel confidence coming back to life in Mount Olive, and the complexion of this set has definitely changed. And if we still have 12 to 13 points to play if Mount Olive goes on a run. But the thing is that will this Mount Olive, if they win this set, show up in the fourth and fifth set if it gets to it? And I think with their confidence growing and starting to see what they're seeing and capitalize on the things that they're capitalizing, it will transfer over into the later sets if we get that far.
The Trojans still have work to do if they want that to happen. They do lead at 12-5, and the Bearcats have just taken a timeout to try to make the adjustments that they made in this first two sets, but this time they have a little bit more work to do down 7. The last two times it was back and forth, even start to the sets, and then they were able to pull away. This time they have a hill to climb.
And if you're Mount Olive here, you want to keep the pressure full throttle on Lander. You do not want to kind of get in a position to say, well, we're up by 7, let's kind of conserve energy and relax. Because seeing as how the first two sets have gone, you give Lander any type of breathing room, they will capitalize on that. So full court pressure for Mount Olive, and then the adjustments on Lander is start reverting more back to your game, seizing on the holes that you see, moving defenders to open up those holes. Better footwork. Get more eye movement involved, trying to move different people into different positions to open up more points on your offensive side. Things like that.
12-6 Trojans, and Lander gets it over the defenders' heads, makes it 12-7, so they scored 2 straight off of the timeout.
And right there, after that mistake, you saw a good, clean transition, and that's another adjustment that they made out of their timeouts is getting their transitions back on track. You know, being able to see the play in your mind and then set it up visually as well as physically, and they're doing a very good job of that, especially on that last point with Lander.
And that was an interesting kill there by the Trojans, as they got several Lander players to bobble the ball, make it 14-7, favor Mount Olive. And what a great save and dig up by the Trojans there to get it back across. And another great save back across onto the Bearcats side. And that's another one. That time, no. Correction, that's Camber Skeen of the Trojans with the save. And they get it back across and they get the point. So it's 15-7, Mount Olive, trying to avoid going 0 for 9 in combined sets this weekend. And a net violation by the Trojans, as Skeen was unable to get it over the net. It was a tough position, though.
It was a tough position, and you would like to have seen Skeen try to have a little bit more body control through that. Just kind of let her body get out of whack and off balance in the center to try to save the dig there, and that's what led to the miscue on her part in the Lander point.
The Lander point makes it 15-9. That's going to send back Caitlin Krafka to do the serve. And that goes out of bounds. That's a point for Lander, so it's now 15-10. And another point for Lander. It's 15-11 as the Jari Cumberbatch was unable to dig that one up on the serve. And Lander unable to return that one, so it's now 17-11.
And for Mount Olive here, a mistake like that was really good for them to try to quell the run that Lander was on, but execute and get one more point out of it, and their confidence will come back. Phenomenal dig right there.
Absolutely. And a beautiful job by the Trojans guarding the net. They have 3 up on the net. And the Bearcats only have their libero up there. But the Bearcats are able to get the point.
Yeah, the libero saved it the first time, and her body was taking her to our near side. The far side, the defensive setter was on her. Couldn't adjust because she was redirecting, going forward, and she couldn't redirect back to save that point, so it just fell in between two defenders, and they couldn't readjust to keep the point alive.
And it's 17-12 now in favor of the Trojans. And that sails out of bounds. Yes, it does. So the Trojans get another point. It's 18-12. Jaguars will only have one meeting with Lander this season. That's the meeting here on October 5th we talked about. They do not go to Lander this season until the final game of the regular season on November 3rd. Long time between each games. The Jaguars the night before that traveled to cross the border to USC Aiken. Take on the Pacers. Last season, those teams played here on Senior Day, on Veterans Day, to close out the regular season, and that was a very entertaining match, ultimately won by the Pacers in 5 sets.
Well, and it will also, and we'll see if that Lander and Augusta matchup has more implications than what we may realize right now, because that could be a situation to where a win will get a team into a playoff berth or a playoff spot, with it being the final game of the regular season for Augusta and Lander. So that would be a crucial game, but it's almost like that game has sort of a feel of how in baseball the Braves and the Phillies have matched up. They played early on about 9 to 12 times. They don't see each other again until the final 2 weeks of the season for 6 games. So it kind of has more of a playoff environment to it. And with these 2 games for Lander and Augusta being spread out like they are, a lot can happen in between those 2 games. And that final game could be a critical game to see who gets into the Peach Belt Conference Tournament, who gets into regional playoffs, who gets into a playoff berth, and possibly a championship tournament. You never know. So, yeah, with it being that far out, it could turn out to be just a game to season everybody up for the playoffs, or it could have major implication on who gets into the playoffs and who goes home.
I think it's pretty clear that both those last 2 matchups will come down to that.
Absolutely.
And the Jaguars can use their Senior Day game on Tuesday, October 30th against Queens College as a final preparation for that, to be ready for the final stretch when they go on the road for their final 2 regular season games.
Absolutely.
Trojans get it across. And they get it back on the dig. Back on the Bearcats side. And the Bearcats get the kill, so it's 20-15. Bearcats still fighting, battling back. They want to close this one out as soon as they can. They get it across the net. A diving dig stop by Boo Luther of Lander. She gets another dig. And a diving dig stop on the Mount Olive end as well by the libero Michaela Sewell, and the point goes to the Bearcats as the Trojans hit it out of bounds. It's a 4-point set, 20-16.
Well, a gorgeous floater by Kubander there almost caught Lander off guard, and a perfect attack in between 4 Bearcats, but then they couldn't capitalize off that when Lander kept the ball alive, and they overshot on the final kill that they were trying to lay down, and now it's becoming a tighter ball. It's becoming a tighter matchup, and it's sort of shifting back in Lander's favor, even though they're down by 3, because of momentum, and you can clearly see that the attack and the aggressiveness and the pushing the envelope, so to speak, has turned back more over to Lander, forcing that, than it was on Mount Olive earlier, trying to force Lander to make mistakes and garnering points off of those mistakes.
4 points in a row so far for Lander. And oh, what a beautiful save to get that one over. And another one.
Yeah, Boo Luther for Landers made 2 critical saves in this juncture, but a miscue on the back end out of play for Lander cost him a beautiful transition into points, because not only did Luther have 2 saves, you had a middle hitter as well come up and dive to make a save. So all of that, which was absolutely gorgeous volleyball play, ends up for naught and in the hands of Mount Olive scoring the point because of a miscue on the back end.
Trojans get another point. It's 22-18. Trojans trying to close out this set and force a first set 4 of this weekend tournament. We didn't have any yesterday in our quadruple header. They were all sweeps. And the point goes to the Bearcats. It's 22-19.
It is great to have a firm base and a firm foundation through your legs and up to set up for a dig, but that also can leave you hanging, kind of creeping back on your back heels and not in a ready position to dig that out and adjust to the height of the ball, and that's what cost Mount Olive right there.
Absolutely. And it's now a 2-point set. And it's really anybody's set here. I think there's really no momentum on either side, with the Trojans trying to close this one out. Lander battling right back, down by 2. And now they're down by 3 as the Trojans win the battle there. It's 23-20. They get it across. And the kill goes to the Bearcats. It's 23-21.
Mount Olive there did not have a good defensive setup coming out of the serve. They left the holes too open, and Lander capitalized and exposed it and garnered their 21st point.
And they hit it over the defenders on the Lander side, but the Bearcats hit it right back over and it goes out of bounds. So the Trojans get the point, and now it's set point, 24-21 Trojans.
Even though it went out of bounds, you want to figure out a way to counter good blocking. Lander just showed that right there by floating it over the arms and the height of the jump of the outside hitter and middle hitter. that's a way to attack it, because if you have two up front and a defensive center in the backcourt, there's a pretty big gap opening up behind the front court to seize on a floater, and not enough time to react. So that's a way to counteract the vicious and good blocking ability of some of these elite teams that we're seeing, like Augusta, like Montevallo, is float over the arms and the head and cinch it down into the open areas to score points, because at that point you'll see the adjustment of either the defensive setter creeping up and kind of closing that gap, or kind of a outside hitter kind of falling back a little bit and trying to cover that up as well.
And Lander, how about that? They have battled back to tie this at 24, and now a team will have to have 2 points in a row, because you have to win by a minimum of 2 in order to win the set. How exciting has this gotten?
Good dig out of the backcourt by the libero for Mount Olive.
And Lander takes the lead, 25-24. My goodness. Has Lander taken all the momentum away?
I wouldn't say they've taken all of the momentum away. I think right now, more so Mount Olive is just shocked at what's happened, and they haven't been able to get their bearings back underneath.
And Lander wins 26-24 and completes the sweep.
Whenever you're back on your heels like that and are not necessarily say more so stunned, I mean, you can be a little bit shocked and still kind of settle back down and get back into your game, but they were never able to regain the momentum and capitalize on what they were given, and Lander took advantage of holes in their game when that happened, and they came back and took the third set right out from under Mount Olive's grasp and sweep this particular matchup.
They absolutely did. They were trailing 24-21. It was set point. Mount Olive was 1 point away from forcing a fourth set, but Lander was already fighting back for quite a while and hanging in there, and they ultimately were able to roar back right then and tie it at 24, and then score 2 in a row to, after that, for a total of 5 in a row, to win 26-24 and stun the Trojans and win this set.
And for Lander, absolutely phenomenal resiliency coming back when it looked like from the jaws of defeat. And this win will do a lot for not only the chemistry of the team, but for the confidence of every individual player, because in a comeback like this, not only do you feel on top of the world and come back and steal the matchup, but it also bodes well for any situation you're in like that in their season, because they know for a fact that they can come back and cause havoc and cause destruction and maybe take some games that they are out of it. So a huge confidence boost for the team, every individual player on that squad, and the Lander head coach, Ashley White, has to be proud of what she saw out of her squad tonight.
And she absolutely does, and they're going to be really confident going into conference play. And watch out, Peach Belt Conference. The Lander Bearcats are for real, and they're going to come back here to the Chris to take on the Jaguars on October 5th. The Jaguars are getting set to take on the Falcons of Montevallo in about an hour and 15 minutes from now, so stay tuned for that one. That'll begin at about 2:30 Eastern Time. And that'll be an epic matchup here tonight, as both teams swept both of their games yesterday. In pretty lopsided fashion, both sides.
But you also, one more quick thing, seeing what we saw yesterday out of Mount Olive,
Yes.
the transition into today, you love the fight that the team has in adversity to try to come back and be able to either take matchups or, at the very least, make the games interesting and give themselves a chance to take those games. So a very impressive, resilient performance by Mount Olive
absolutely.
out of the adversity that they experienced here on the Christenberry Fieldhouse court. A very resilient team, and they will, if they don't get wins out of the games that they will come across in their season, they will be headaches for a lot of teams trying to close games out, or they will definitely, through that, take some games as well.
And it shows you, and they showed today with the way they rallied in set 3 just how hard of a team they are to close out.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's something that Peach Belt Conference teams are going to have to keep in mind when they get set to play them later on this season.
Absolutely. And you know what, man? Robert, it's been a great start to the second day. I mean, we've definitely enjoyed the tournament thus far. I mean, we've seen sweeps, we've seen drama out of the last game, and it leads in to the final matchup of the night and of the tournament between two workhorse teams in Augusta University and the Montevallo Falcons.
That's absolutely right. We look forward to bringing that one to you, and it's going to be set to begin in about an hour and 10 minutes from now, 2:30 Eastern Time. It's going to be the final game of this weekend Jaguar Rumble tournament. The tournament's gone by way too fast. A lot of games, and boom, they do seem to fly by. And we got one more to go, and it should be a memorable one and a good way to end the tournament, if you ask me, Blake. We'll look forward to it as well. Once again, the Lander Bearcats they sweep the Mount Olive Trojans 3-0 here in the first game of today's doubleheader. This has been a special presentation of the Augusta University Athletics Network on YouTube. For Blake Collins, I'm Robert Ambrose. We invite you all to stay tuned in just over an hour as the Jaguars get set to host the Montevallo Falcons in the tournament finale. We'll be back.